In the face of more questions from Congress and key U.S. allies, the Obama administration said it's determined to send what it calls an unambiguous signal, not just to Syria's leader Bashar al-Assad, but the world.
It's also important for other totalitarian dictators around the globe who are watching the circumstances unfold in Syria and are watching the international community's reaction to understand that the international community will not tolerate the use of chemical weapons.
The White House said Mr. Obama is still looking at a compressed time frame for action, along with a possible presidential statement on a Syria mission, and did not deny there are doubts about forming a broad international coalition.
Because the American president foolishly drew a red line, and because of his position now, he's going to attack or face humiliation.
Others accused Prime Minister David Cameron of following the U.S. into another war based on faulty intelligence, namely another Iraq.
But this is not like Iraq, and the evidence that the Syrian regime has used these weapons in the early hours of the 21st of August is right in front of our eyes.
White House officials say there's no comparison.
What we saw in that circumstance was an administration that was searching high and low to produce evidence to justify a military invasion, an open-ended military invasion of another country.
But the administration still had to defend President Obama's comments to PBS that somehow Syria could attack the U.S.
There is a prospect, a possibility in which chemical weapons, they can have devastating effects, could be directed at us.
Does he really think that Syria is capable of launching chemical weapons at the United States? What did he mean by that?
I think what we're very concerned about is the willingness that the Assad regime has demonstrated to use chemical weapons.
Deputy Press Secretary Josh Earnest pointed to allies near Syria, like Israel and Turkey.
That doesn't even get into military bases and other interests that we have in the region.
To make his case, the president called top leaders in Congress from both parties after complaints from one key Intelligence Committee chairman that conversations so far do not constitute formal notification and consultation with Congress. Even some Democrats aren't satisfied.
Chris, I definitely believe that there needs to be a vote.
The White House still plans to release an unclassified intelligence assessment to the public before a strike, but officials warn it won't be the same version shown to key members of Congress. That, a spokesman said, is because they have to protect what they call sources and methods. Jim Acosta, CNN, the White House.
Now, if things continue this way, the UN Refugee Agency says there may be more than 3 million people displaced by the end of this year. CNN's Our Damon shows us the situation in Lebanon. We want to warn you that some of the images in this story may be disturbing.
I am a doctor. I am a doctor. Dr. Karam tries to soothe her. What's your name? It's Yumna. Am I alive? Am I alive? She cries out. So many of the victims were in the same state, Dr. Karam painfully remembers. Now he fears there is worse to come, especially if the U.S. and its allies strike. This regime, as we have seen in the last 2 years, he says, the more they are backed into a corner, the more vicious they become. Their stocks of atropine, other medicines, and equipment to combat chemical agents have yet to be replenished. Out on the empty streets, one man says, we are stuck in the middle, between the Russians and the Americans, the Iranians and the Saudis, and we are the victims. For those who know the wrath of the regime too well, there is fear that the potential strike is going to hurt the people more than the regime itself. And this man adds, the regime is going to evacuate its people and leave the detainees in bases and airports and say, look, America carried out a massacre. Under the scorching sun in neighboring Lebanon, a team of volunteers is hard at work.
We'll be able to host is up to 1,200 families. That's around 10,000 people. But that's nothing compared with the influx expected. Lots of people will stay in the streets.
It's not entirely legal, as the Lebanese government has yet to allow official camps to be established. Tarif describes this effort as refugee crisis triage.
With the new influx, There is no contingency plan to contain the new influx, and therefore we're moving from a very bad situation to a situation where we will not be able to deal with.
At a reception center next to Lebanon's main border crossing with Syria, Omar Al-Hawayis just finished putting in an emergency order with Qatar for more humanitarian supplies. We've also told the mosques during Friday prayers to call on people to open their homes when the strike happens, he tells us. Many, especially those from the capital and its outskirts, don't want to talk.
That van is the second vehicle packed with people that we've stopped trying to talk to, asking them if they're fleeing. They all seem to be very agitated, very nervous, saying, no, we're just here for a visit. But clearly, they are very, very concerned.
Panic and fear is everywhere as the region waits for expected strikes from the U.S. and its allies.
Continue. Some say government budget cuts are crippling scientific research programs. One prominent astrophysicist has packed her bags already. She says she's being forced to look for a job elsewhere. More in this CNN report.
Amaya Moro Martin is a Spanish astronomer exploring a vast new universe. Motherhood. This is her first child. But her joy is tempered by concerns about providing for her little girl. Her job at a government research center is being eliminated. So she's leaving for the United States to work, she says, at NASA on a space telescope.
Many of my colleagues are either leaving the country or they are leaving science.
It's become known as Spain's brain drain.
A country like Spain that is in such an economic crisis, it just cannot cut in research and development so much because it's basically boycotting the future of the country.
She's no stranger to America. She got her PhD in astronomy at the University of Arizona and later worked at Princeton as a researcher. But 6 years ago, she says she and some other Spanish scientists abroad returned home after a government promise of tenured-track research jobs for scientists. But budget cuts have all but killed that.
So do you feel you were tricked?
Yes, absolutely. But more than me, it goes beyond that. I feel the society is being tricked because we have a government that is not investing in a sector that can help Spain get out of this economic crisis.
She's written to the Prime Minister demanding more research funds and helped lead scientists on a protest to the Economy Ministry, where they tried to deliver a petition with thousands of signatures. They weren't allowed in.
And I think in one of these pictures we are taping it to the fence. That's the letter taped to the fence.
That was here. The Ministry of Economy declined an interview, but in a statement insists that funding for scientific research will be a priority in next year's budget.
Yeah, in priority in the budget cuts. This is what's happening for all these years. They keep saying that it's a priority, but then...
So she's focused her priority on her daughter's future in America.
Well, I will tell her that her mom did all she could to improve the situation in Spain, not only for her, but for everyone. But she also chose the option that allow her to have a bright career.
Because there's no future for you or your daughter here?
No.
Al Goodman, CNN, Guadalajara, Spain.
And before we go, reminder of our top stories. The President, His Excellency Sheikh Professor Alhaji Dr. Yahya Jammeh has stressed the need to enforce anti-littering laws to end indiscriminate dumping during a surprise tour of streets of the capital city. Players in the business of school health and nutrition have been brainstorming on ways of promoting food safety and quality in schools, as well as personal hygiene of school food vendors. U.S. President Barack Obama has tasked his aides to work out what he calls a compressed timeline as Washington mulls over a response strategy to an alleged chemical attack by pro-Assad forces. And the seemingly unending economic problems in Spain are putting the country's scientific research program on the brink of near collapse. That's all in this edition of the news. Thank you very much for your time. I am Fatou Kamara.